Hi and welcome to Women's Health Unwrapped with Nicola Farndell. I'm here today on my own, welcoming you to join me to unlock the secrets of true health and vitality. And today is a topic that will certainly help you to do that. Now, if you're new to the podcast, to let you know, sometimes, quite often, I have guest experts with me or people to share their own real life stories, all to help you get clear on the power of building sustainable, healthy habits without the overwhelm and confusion you feel right now, because I totally get that the health and wellness space and menopause, of course, is a busy, noisy space with lots of people even telling you that you should do this and you shouldn't do that. So I'm all about stripping back and laying out the truth about not just how to take care of yourself, but why taking better care of yourself is the answer to the happy, vibrant life that you're striving so hard to create. Now, today I want to talk about something that's not only one of the most common symptoms of menopause, but for many women, it's the first time they've ever experienced it in their life. Anxiety. And I'm not talking about a little bit of worry before a presentation, or speaking up in a meeting, or a flutter in your chest before something like an interview or a test. I'm talking about the kind of anxiety that can make driving on a motorway feel like scaling Everest in flip-flops, or even worse, like you're almost taking yourself on an end-of-life trip. It's the kind that stops you from going to social events that you'd normally enjoy, or leaves you lying awake at 3 a.m, heart pounding, head racing, catastrophizing about things that haven't even happened, but you are 100% sure are going to. And I get it, not just because I've read about it and teach this and share this in the work that I do, but because I lived with anxiety and panic attacks for almost all of my adult life, from 19 years of age. They were pretty much debilitating for 26 years, and anxiety is still very much a part of who I am. Now, back when I first experienced it, the word anxiety wasn't even part of the conversation. My GP, my doctor, at the time called it a funny term and sent me on my way. I remember him saying, "Are you just having another one of those funny turns that you get, Nicola?" Yeah, a total lack of support, but we didn't talk about it back then. That was 1995, and obviously the world thankfully changed a lot when it comes to mental health and anxiety. I carried it alone, and it felt like shame. It felt like a stigma, a noose around my neck that really meant I was weak or flawed, abnormal. Here's the truth. I was anything but weak, and it took me probably most of those 26 years to, in any form, believe that I had strength rather than total weakness. And I want you to know that you are strong. You are anything but weak. Now, this is such a big topic and an important one for me to talk about, because recent data shows that over 1 in 2 women report anxiety symptoms during perimenopause for the first time. So they haven't ever experienced anxiety until they've reached this season of life. And that first stage of perimenopause is often the most intense phase for mental health distress. Just last year, Newson Health completed research that indicated 86% of women are most affected by anxiety. It's the second most common symptom. And that's why today I want to unpack with you why anxiety can hit so hard in menopause, how it can creep into parts of your life and who you are in ways that you'd never expect. And most importantly, what you can do about it. Here's the thing. Your brain and body are changing during menopause, with or without symptoms, with or without debilitating symptoms. Those changes are happening inside and out. Our body is changing in ways that most of us were never taught about. We've all heard of hot flushes, maybe weight gain, maybe a bit of moodiness as well. But anxiety, nobody mentioned that, not until recently. Anxiety is essentially an alarm system. It's your amygdala, which is a part of your brain, the fear center in your brain, and it spots something that feels like a threat and sends an urgent message to your body like, get ready to fight, run, to survive, or maybe it's even to freeze and do nothing. It's all about survival. Now, obviously, back in the cavemen or cave people time, we could potentially be chased by a hungry beast, a tiger or a dinosaur. And of course, that amygdala was doing what it needed to do to help us survive, to tell us that danger was imminent. There was a threat to our lives. So we needed to respond in that fight, flight, or freeze fashion. But the trouble is, in menopause, that alarm system can get a lot more sensitive. And of course, the reason for this is our hormones. Estrogen plays a huge role in regulating mood. It boosts serotonin, which is your happy hormone, and it even keeps stress hormone cortisol in check. And of course, estrogen is very anti-inflammatory. And when we are experiencing those declining and fluctuating levels of estrogen, especially during perimenopause, those reduced hormones mean that we have great inflammation throughout our body, including in our brain. So there are significant changes, almost remodeling happening in our brain, which can mean the way we functioned up to that point starts to shift as our brain adjusts to the new normal. Or for many years, an uncertainty of what's happening as it learns what to do in response to these changing hormones. The second key one is progesterone, which has a very calming effect. It can be almost that sister, if you think of estrogen and progesterone as sisters, it can be that sister who isn't the party animal. You know, she just likes to stay at home, keep everything really nice, status quo. And without progesterone, which tends not to fluctuate as much as estrogen, but certainly does decline and can be the one that really drives those anxious, low moods, dysregulated emotions many women feel. And then you have finally the third of our sex hormones and the ones that are triggered by the onset of perimenopause, testosterone. It supports mental stamina, focus, drive. It's responsible for many things across our body, but when it comes to anxiety, that kind of focus and energy as well can be really impacted and shift us towards those feelings instead of dysregulation, worry, and anxiety. So as these hormones decline, and none of them really decline in a straight line, perhaps testosterone possibly the most, your brain chemistry shifts. Think of it like Wi-Fi dropping in and out. And we've all been there where it's like, what's wrong with the Wi-Fi? Or maybe it's the kids regularly asking you that, where everything's just that bit harder, slower, more frustrating. And if you've ever experienced PMS, premenstrual syndrome, postnatal depression or anxiety in the past, your brain may already be more sensitive to these changes. Many women are simply more sensitive to hormonal changes, hence why some women never experience any kind of PMS, but others are debilitated by it and even have more extreme forms like PMDD. In one UK survey, it said that nearly 7 in 10 women described anxiety as the most difficult symptoms of their transition. And a recent large meta-analysis showed that around 1/3 of menopausal women experience depression, which of course can be closely linked to anxiety. So that just indicates how widespread these emotional, psychological and cognitive symptoms of menopause can be. Now, looking forward, a global comprehensive study projected that the burden of anxiety disorders among perimenopausal women is expected to rise by almost 41% by 2035, so just 10 years from now, reaching 1,180 cases per 100,000, which is up from 677 per 100,000 in 2021. So just let that sink in a moment and think about how rapidly that symptom of anxiety is going to grow. And a key word there is, that burden of what an anxiety disorder can lead to for women. It's huge. And then there's something I want to introduce lightly here, which I call the psychological loop of menopause. This is something that I share and teach when I hold corporate workshops, and I've run some specifically on anxiety itself. So this psychological loop of menopause is how you have this loop of the symptoms themselves, which, could be things like your heart racing or dizziness, or those that are not associated with anxiety, the hot flushes, the joint pain, the tinnitus in your ear, the vaginal atrophy, all of those different symptoms, whether physical, mental, or emotional, that we can experience. And you feel those symptoms and your brain starts spinning stories like, what if there's something wrong with me? What if I have a heart attack? What if I lose control while I'm driving? What if I have early onset dementia? And then we've got, the aging that menopause can bring to the surface. The fact that we're possibly past the midlife point. We talk about midlife and menopause, but midlife is, of course, a huge range. And given the average age that women live to in the UK, often menopause is happening way later than the middle of our life. So those thoughts of aging, losing your fertility, maybe you definitely don't want another child, but it's still the fact that we're losing that part of who we are as a woman, as a female. So all of those thoughts, those worries, the stories of what might come from the physical symptoms we have, confirm to your brain that there's something wrong. And this loop keeps spinning. And often we don't know what is at the root of it. Is it the physical symptom or the emotional symptom? Is it the worry of aging? Is it feeling like you are no longer yourself? Is it, wondering where you are in your life, and that leads to concern over what's to come and how, much your life isn't aligned to who you want to be. So all of those thoughts, worries, and then feelings really do loop together to, become this real physical, emotional cycle. It's not just in your head. It is very real, and it's very exhausting for so many women. If you would like to dive deep into what's changing in your brain and how brain health impacts your menopause, I'm showing a book here if you are watching on YouTube, called The Menopause Brain. So if you want to look more into this, because it is a fascinating subject and one that I think can really help every woman as she navigates menopause, as well as thinking about your future health, Dr. Lisa Mosconi's book, The Menopause Brain, is really fantastic. She's also a brilliant speaker. Maybe if reading non-fiction like this and some of the science stuff might not be your vibe, then definitely check her out on some of the bigger podcasts she's been on. Ones like Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, Mel Robbins' podcast, Dr. Louise Newson's here in the UK. So I want to pause here and say this clearly. If you're experiencing anxiety for the first time in menopause, or if it's suddenly worse than ever, you are not broken. You are not stuck with this for the rest of your life. If you need to seek help, please do so. Your GP is, for most of us, certainly here in the UK, our first port of call for something like this. Perhaps you have an employee assistance programme if you're employed. Often they aren't used. They're not always shared clearly or, really understood as to what you can access through there. They are brilliant. They can offer lots of support like counselling, even therapy. Perhaps you've got private healthcare. Perhaps you have access to, other kinds of support in your wider network, friends, family, someone you can speak to. If you are really struggling, please reach out to me and I can signpost you and be that first step to you taking, a step towards getting the help that you need. But you're not broken, because anxiety can really feel different for everyone and can be so challenging. I know from my own experience. So I thought I'd share a few of the most common signs and symptoms. A pounding or raising heart. It can feel like your heart is actually skipping a beat and that it's about to stop. And this was one of my most regular symptoms. My anxiety would lead to very extreme panic attacks, and that racing heart and feeling that my heart was going to physically stop beating was very, very scary. Sweaty palms, shaking hands, shaking knees, literally trembling through your body even. Tightness in your chest or throat, feeling like you can't catch your breath and therefore you're going to stop breathing. Feeling hot or flushed. Your mind is racing, those catastrophizing thoughts, like of some impending doom coming, whether that's towards yourself and your own health, perhaps around your kids. That's a very common one. I've experienced that with some of the clients I've worked with, where they talk about suddenly having these extreme concerns and worries over something happening to their children, regardless of how old their kids are. Just imagining those worst case scenarios, like the car crashing on a motorway or your children drowning in the swimming pool. It's really scary when you feel things like that. And for me, anxiety used to hit in places where I couldn't escape. It's almost like a claustrophobia type feeling. So if I was in a work meeting and I knew it was going to be my turn to speak, especially giving an introduction in front of a room of people I didn't know, that was awful. And I would have those anxiety symptoms and sensations, but have to stay grounded in the seat where I was, with sweaty, shaky palms, rapid breathing, catastrophizing thoughts, head spinning. I also had them on aeroplanes when I was working as cabin crew, which was very scary, 35,000 feet above the Atlantic in the middle of the night. One of the reasons why I didn't stay in that career for very long. I'd even have them in the cinema when I was in the middle of a row and felt trapped and couldn't get out. I'd feel my body switch into this full panic mode, convinced something terrible was about to happen. And I didn't know back then that anxiety can become a habit loop. Your brain learns to associate certain situations with danger, and that includes certain feelings. So if you are experiencing chronic stress, which is ongoing regular stress, and you are perhaps responding in a certain way, your brain starts to create this habit loop where it associates that feeling or that thought with danger. And then that response, that fight, flight, or freeze, becomes automatic. It is automatic in nanoseconds. You don't even know that you have pushed that loop into play. And that's why you can feel anxious just thinking about the motorway drive before you've even put your seatbelt on. To get anxious even before you've started planning the presentation and what you're going to say, let alone being in the room. So if that's you and anxiety is stopping you doing everyday things, it's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign your brain and body are asking for support. It's a sign to pause and really build self-awareness around what is changing and beyond your control. So that's the first thing, is really understanding why anxiety and menopause is happening and maybe happening to you for the first time in your life. Now, when it comes to managing anxiety and menopause, I'm going to give you some tips here, some tangible actions, because this podcast is all about helping you to build those healthier habits that are sustainable, that become a part of who you are and fit into your lifestyle, and help you to live that long, strong, healthy, happy life that I'm here to support you living. So there's two layers to this, okay? And I dive into this a lot more in my programs, coaching, and when I run the corporate workshops. The first layer is what I call your in the moment support tools. These are things that are going to calm you. Think of them like a Swiss Army knife. It's something you can whip out of your pocket in the moment when you need it, and it has multifaceted benefits like the Swiss Army knife. So the first one is box breathing. This is where you inhale for a count of 4 through your nose, you hold it for 4, and then you exhale through your mouth for 4, and hold for 4 again. And on each of those 4 counts, you draw if you want, in your mind a box, or you can picture it as a window, but that visual aspect can really help, as well as the breathing itself. And that signals safety to your nervous system. I used this box breathing from being 19, first starting to have my anxiety and panic attacks. And it was a lifesaver. It really was. And you can often do it without anybody around you knowing that you're doing it. Maybe you're on the tube, underground. Maybe you're on the bus. Maybe you're driving in your car with your family. You're in a meeting. You can try this box breathing technique to help regulate your nervous system and all of that flight, fright. God, can't talk. Fight, flight, freeze response. Put my teeth back in. Now, the next Swiss Army knife tool is grounding with 5 senses. And you can do this any way around. There's no right or wrong. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it could be 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. And that just helps to bring your mind into the present. It distracts from that fight, flight, freeze response. It helps to regulate your nervous system as well. And that is a brilliant one. Engaging the part of your brain in activity and doing something. Journaling or drawing actually can be a really good one to whip out in the moment. When I went on a recent holiday on a long haul flight, I took a little notebook and a pencil with me. And on the way back, I did feel quite anxious, and I got it out and I just started making random notes of a podcast I was listening to on the in-flight entertainment system and drawing little things, because that was shifting my brain into this action mode, doing something, being creative, as opposed to going down that very rapid hole and spiral of catastrophizing my anxiety. And then the final little tip on this first layer is to reframe the thought. And this is a huge one as well, is realizing that your brain is trying to protect you. So a great one that I've learned from Mel Robbins is holding your hand over your heart, like in the middle of your chest, and saying, I am safe, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved. And so it's just about reframing that thought of, nothing bad is going to happen to me. This has happened before. And yes, I did feel some anxiety and maybe panic, if you experienced that. And I was okay. This is my body doing what it's meant to do. And my brain is changing because of menopause shifts. So just rationalizing it and being logical to help reframe it. And of course, like with any habits, these tips are ones that I'm giving you to try to practice, to see how they feel for you, and to do them regularly so that they become something like that Swiss Army knife you can just rapidly pull out and know, I can do reframe the thought, and that's going to help me. So the second layer is habit foundations. These are my 5 pillars that I use in my reset plan. This is where real transformation happens. This is about building the health foundations that make your nervous system more resilient. So this is about preventing anxiety. By building strong health, you will be someone who is more resilient, who has built all of these different habits into her life, so that you aren't struggling as much with stress. Perhaps, it's lack of sleep that's leading to the anxiety, and bringing more balance to your hormones so that your brain isn't responding in that way of the fight, flight, freeze as often. Now, these 5 pillars I use across my different coaching programs and workshops. These are mindset. This is about that self-compassion bit. Really, being self-aware as to what's happening and showing yourself that self-compassion. Reframing menopause as a season of renewal, a change, a transition, and something that you can navigate by supporting yourself with these habits and foundations of health I'm sharing. Second one is movement. Strength training for me was and still is really important. It was a real game changer going back sort of 10 years for me. Also, walking outside is, medicine for your mind as well as great for your body. And remember, our mind body is totally connected. So movement is great. Nutrition, really important, supporting your gut-brain axis. We do have this link through our vagus nerve at the base of our skull, spine, running all of the way down into our gut. So, eating lots of fibre, the rainbow, being really diverse with your choice of plants, including fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, pulses and so on. Definitely reducing ultra processed foods and sugar, helping to keep your blood sugar steady. So less processed foods if you are someone that's eating that, because they can be a huge trigger of anxiety. The fourth one is sleep. Can't emphasize enough consistent bedtime and morning routines, and really looking at what you do in the morning, because how you frame your day with your mindset really does determine your energy, your emotions, and so on. So again, it's not going to fix it on day one, but regularly practicing some of these habits so that they do become a part of you and happen subconsciously, which is what a habit is, then you are going to feel the benefit of this. The final one is stress. Really think about your stress triggers. And a big one I'll call out here is your phone, tech, and of course, social media. What are you scrolling? What are you looking at? What's going in? Because that is fuel. It's not just about the food we eat. What are you fueling your brain and your mind, which is the thinking part of who you are, with? So, protect your energy. Prioritize what is important to you to look at, to see. And if it isn't, and maybe it's a negative, then think about how you can reduce that and put some boundaries in place around that. Now, as I said, none of these tips and tools are overnight fixes, but over time, they will change the way that your brain and body responds to stress and put you back in control. And it is when you take control of your health that you will get those incredible ripple effects that really do help you to know your worth, have that strong self-esteem and self-belief, and be able to navigate anything in life, menopause included, but any other health changes to you or your family, because we are going to experience these things in our life. Now, if you just take one thing from today's episode, let it be this. Anxiety in menopause is common, but it's not inevitable, and it's not a life sentence. You're not weak. You are not broken. You are going through a physical, hormonal and emotional shift. And with the right tools and habits, you can calm the alarm. You can quiet the loop and start living with more ease. So here's my invitation to you. Choose one tool from today. Maybe it's the box breathing, or maybe it's a morning walk, and start today. Even if it's only for a couple of minutes. Small steps create big change. Now, if you'd like more support, I do have my menopause guide, perimenopause revival guide, which is linked to in the notes. It has in there 10 brilliant tips, including ones to support you with managing anxiety and that emotional dysregulation in menopause. So make sure you click the link and download that guide. And just know you aren't alone in this. There is a community here that you can be part of and get support from, because I want you to know that you can build strong health, even if you are struggling with anxiety as one of your dominant, struggling, symptoms of menopause. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you've enjoyed this podcast. And if today's episode has resonated, share this with one of your friends. Let's get this in front of more women to help them live long, strong, healthy, and happy. Thank you.